Hi, and welcome to SpectrumWorld TV. I have been thinking about something today. Um, when your child becomes an adult, right, and the bulk of their support system simply starts to fade away, uh, but you don't get to, right? No one really explains what's going to happen when you hit the adult cliff, as I call it. Your child leaves the public education system and goes to adult services. Now, when your child was younger, right, they have that support. They have the IEP meetings. They have the teachers. They have yeah, nurses and specialists and things, right? You have a whole team of accountable adults. It wasn't perfect, but you had structure. You had a calendar. You had deadlines. You had milestones to be achieved, right? But when you hit that cliff, things change. For me, there was a tremendous amount of momentum going into the final IEPs, the transition point. A lot of activity, a lot of talking to teachers and social workers and things like that. But it quickly dissipated. And things got quiet. The meetings stopped, right? And then instead of going into meetings and relying on other people, the responsibility all shifted back to you, right? I was the one making the phone calls. I was the one following up. I was the one keeping the schedule. Okay. So, it wasn't, I've always been the parent. I've always been the champion. But now I've become the coordinator, the historian, the safety net, the contingency plan. No one prepared me for this. Here's what I've noticed. Schools are entitlement based. Adult services are eligibility based, right? That's a structural difference. Okay. For the schools, the services are guaranteed. They're written in law, basically, right? But adulthood, right? Yeah, your child has to qualify for the services, and funding is limited. Staff is short supplied, and there's wait lists if you can't get in, right? So the burden that was on the school system, not all of it, but the bulk of it, shifts back to the parent, to the families. Now, I'm not blaming anybody. They all did great. Most of the people who helped us were good, wonderful people doing their best. But this structural change is significant, okay? And it's not something we're really warned about. I like to think what happens to me at the adulthood after my child hits that cliff, it wasn't a topic in the IEP. Not really. Okay? So, what do we do? Well, let's talk about this. When this happens, you know what you're faced with? Ongoing challenges. And they take a toll. You become exhausted. You become hyper vigilant because, the responsibility is on your shoulders. Maybe your spouse as well. Okay? But I imagine somebody has to have a full-time job to pay for things, right? So usually the day-to-day responsibilities falls on one person's shoulders more than another. Maybe there's a tag team approach or something. But out of this exhaustion, the quiet fear starts to come up. What happens when I can't do this anymore? I can't tell you how many times I thought about that. What happens when I'm just can't keep up? You know? Now, I've thought about that more times than I care to admit. It's not a panic. It's just kind of a growing dread. It's back to the same two questions. Why I started SpectrumWorld? Who will love my child after I'm gone? Where will they live after I'm gone? Those two fundamental questions that haunt us. Now, if you've thought questions like this, it doesn't mean you're failing or anything. It just means that you're aware and you're being honest, and that's a good thing. So what do we do? Okay. This is why I've started to think about caregiver sustainability. Okay. Housing is important. The financial picture for our children is important, right? But someone has to be taking care of us. To read, we cannot build long-term stability for our adult children if we're collapsing quietly ourselves. Okay? We owe it to our children to take care of ourselves. And I think that's important. That's one of the things I want us to really talk about on this channel. Okay? Now, I'd really like to hear from you. Okay? Was there a moment that you can identify when you felt that shift, when all that support had faded into the background and suddenly you were thrust back into the front and all the responsibility was back on your shoulders? I'd like to hear from you. And even if it's just one sentence, I'd read it. Okay? Finally, if this conversation resonates with you, if you want to hear more, please subscribe. That would be wonderful. And also, I publish a monthly newsletter. It's free, and you can sign up for that if you wish. I go a little deeper into subject matter in the newsletter. Details are in the description. Okay. That's it. Thanks for joining me today. If just nothing else, I'm glad you're here, and I see you.